Thank you kindly. Look, as we race to spend more than $81 billion in this bill, primarily for ICE and deportation, the Department of Justice just terminated hundreds of millions of dollars in grants to groups working in all of our communities, cutting funds for state, local, and county law enforcement, cutting funds for opioid addiction treatment programs, cutting funds for crime prevention programs, cutting funds to support victims of rape and sexual assault. And this move is baffling. These are grants that support our local police in solving violent crime. They help survivors of abuse and sexual assault navigate the legal system. They provide drug addiction treatment services and overdose prevention services. They're working with young people. I'm going to submit some documents for the record, Mr. Chairman, that will help spell this out. Here's an article entitled "Trump Delivers Massive Blow to Youth Justice Programs."
Objection.
April 29th. Here is a letter that we all received from the Conference of Chief Justices in the state courts administration expressing deep concerns about the termination of Department of Justice grants to our communities. And I also ask unanimous consent to enter the record a letter dated April 25 from the Council of State Governments Justice Center to express profound concerns and strong opposition to the termination of Department of Justice grants totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. I raise this because, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I raise it because, some of our colleagues, they've been quite inscrutable in their reaction to what we've been talking about tonight. Sometimes it seems like I'm in a Quaker meeting house or a mega mime troupe or something, because I'm trying to read people's facial expressions and their body language to see how they're reacting. But a lot of what we've been voting on are constitutional principles like due process and free speech and birthright citizenship. But this is something that really should unify all of us. And I want to warn all of my colleagues, Democrat and Republican, that there will be danger back home if you do not vote to restore these grants that have just been categorically cut. I've been so upset about it after I've spoken to some law enforcement from my state that I tried to track down where did this come from. And it didn't come from the House of Representatives. There was nobody pushing it here. As far as I can tell, it didn't come from anybody in the Senate. Nobody in the executive branch is identified with it except for someone who works for DOGE, and I see a picture of him in a bow tie. The name is Tarak Makicha. And Tarak Makicha is the author of the Excel spreadsheet that destroyed hundreds of these grants to local law enforcement in our communities, to local victims and survivors groups in our communities, to anti-gang efforts, to juvenile assistance work, and so on. And so I was just able to look at Tarak Makicha up online, and this is a DOGE employee. The bio on this employee's website goes back basically to Tesla from 2017 to 2019. They worked at Tesla in various roles, including head of strategic planning, Tesla Energy, chief of staff, North America sales and delivery, and global finance lead, working capital and supply chain. Most recently, they've been the vice president of finance and operations at SkySafe since 2022. They attended the University of Texas and so on. Well, look, this person has essentially dismantled a lot of the infrastructure of funding to combat crime and violence and to assist victims in all of our districts. And so this amendment is simple. I don't know that any member of this committee or Congress would be saying if this person had not simply wiped out all of this funding, we should be wiping out that funding. But this person did it. And that doesn't seem like a very sensible way to proceed procedurally. And I know that all of us are going to hear about it from people in our districts if you have not already heard about it. And I don't want anybody to plead complete ignorance. This is our chance to reverse the damage right now. And especially for people who don't want to get into gun safety regulation, this is money that goes actually to try to create peace in the community, to fight gangs, to get kids off the streets. All that money's being cut right now. And so what this amendment does, Mr. Chairman, is simply to restore all of these cuts that were made by this individual, as far as I can tell. I thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman from New York.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
I just want to emphasize a couple of points that the ranking member so eloquently made, and make sure that my Republican colleagues who talk very much about caring about public safety and caring so much about fighting crime and law and order understand that the grants that were yanked away from so many of these organizations makes our communities less safe. It makes fighting violent crime, gangs, guns, drug trafficking much, much more difficult. That's what these grants do. These grants in various different ways, some of them go to local law enforcement, some of them go to local organizations that keep kids out of gangs, that keep guns off of our streets, that reduce demand for guns. These are proven to be effective programs. And it's not even just that we decide, okay, in the future, we're not going to fund these grants. It is actually grants that have already been appropriated, have already been obligated, and in some cases have already been spent down because they're in the budgets of these organizations, and yet they're just yanked away by an administration that talks so much about public safety. And we hear over and over, apparently, of the you would listen to the president of the 5 million undocumented immigrants who came over the border in the last 4 years. I think the way he talks, it's got to be about 4,950,000 of them must be criminals or drug dealers or rapists, because certainly everybody I hear about is a violent criminal. Obviously, the data doesn't bear that out. In fact, the data shows that Americans commit a much higher proportion of crimes than immigrants do. But if you want to make our country safe, I think there's an expression, make America safe again. Isn't that one of the expressions? You would think that you would want to invest in programs in law enforcement that actually do make us safe. But once again, this president, this administration, and the complicit Republicans in the House are all talk, no action. Because if you truly wanted to put your vote where your mouth is, you would 100% support this amendment and ensure that our communities are kept safe by these critical programs.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, of course I will yield.
And thank you for that powerful statement you just made. My amendment would require DOJ to reinstate grant funding to hundreds of groups. Here's one of the ones that contacted my office, the National Policing Institute. And they have a program where they provide critical support to local and county law enforcement under the, quote, Rural Violent Crime Reduction Initiative. So they're able to take the money and put it into rural areas to fight violent crime. And they've gotten the grant, they were expecting the grant, they were counting on the grant, and whoever this person is, not the House of Representatives, not the Senate, I'm not hearing anybody in the cabinet taking credit for it, but whoever this person is in DOGE, which sometimes fashions itself a fourth branch of government, just slashed all of that money. Is there a single member of Congress who knew this was going to happen? Is there a single member of Congress who wanted this to happen? And now they're going to be showing up in our offices saying, we had a whole program for fighting violent crime in rural areas, which is gone now. We had a whole program for reaching out to young people with an after-school program, and now it's gone. And what are we going to say? Well, we didn't know anything about it. I'm afraid at this point we are burdened with the knowledge that DOGE has done this. And so I thank the gentleman for yielding. I hope everybody can support this amendment.
Gentleman yields back.